traveled to Louisiana to the ICE detention facility she was thrown in and got the chance to meet Mesa Ozturk. Joining me now is Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts. Senator, it's good to have you on the program. First, just tell us about your meeting with Ms. Ozturk.
Well, it was powerful. She has an incredible spirit, given the conditions, because just 4 weeks ago, she was swept off the streets of Sullivan, Massachusetts, a Tufts University graduate student, taken to New Hampshire, then to Vermont, then down to Atlanta, and then over to a remote part of Louisiana and put in prison. The whole way, they didn't show her the warrant. They would not allow her to call her lawyer. It was obviously terrifying for her. She feared for her life. She had no idea what was happening. She felt that they were people who meant her harm, that could actually kill her. And given all that, and the fact that she's been in this prison 1,500 miles from Somerville, Massachusetts, and a 3-hour drive outside of New Orleans, her spirit is high. But again, she has asthma, and she continues to suffer from asthma and the need for medication. But through it all, she is someone who knows that she has done nothing wrong, and she knows that there are many other people, even in that prison, who are similarly situated. That is, that they're in prison with no crime having been alleged against them and no evidence to convict them or prove that a crime had been committed. And so to that extent, it was a privilege for us, Congresswoman Presley, Congressman McGovern, and I from Massachusetts, to have met with her.
It's so just insane to me this woman is being detained. I mean, her freedom has been taken away because she wrote an op-ed. Now, the government could have said, pursuant to this authority, we're revoking your visa, you have to leave the country. One question, I suspect if this happened to an American in Turkey, say an American student in Turkey, put into a Turkish prison because they wrote something the Turkish government didn't like, that this would be an international issue, that I would hope and assume our embassy would say to the government, you can't do this, and try to get them out. As the Turkish...
A debate going on at Tufts University. Beyond that, they have charged her with nothing. And so to the extent to which this is more like Russia or more like Belarus, where someone might be swept up off the street and put in a prison with no charges and no lawyers, no evidence produced, that's really where we are right now in the United States. And it's not just her. She's not alone. Mahmoud Khalil is in the same situation in a different prison, and we went and visited him. And it's so bad for him. No charges against him, by the way. No evidence produced against him. No crime that they allege that he has committed, except Marco Rubio says that they should just be pulled out of their communities and put into prisons. That's the total extent of it. So it's a violation, first of all, of the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, that is not expendable. It's a violation of the First Amendment, of the Fifth Amendment, rather, due process. That's not expendable. In fact, both of them are indispensable in having a constitutional government. And right now, Rubio is acting illegally and unconstitutionally on behalf of Donald Trump. And he's doing it over and over again. And the victims are people like Ramesa and Mahmoud, and many others who are suffering because of this dictatorial, rogue, authoritarian government that believes that it is independent of any of the laws which have governed our country going all the way back to Patriots' Day 250 years ago here in Lexington and Concord, which we're celebrating this week.
Yeah, I would add, among those victims, Mahmoud Khalil's wife, who just gave birth to their son, his wife, who is an American citizen, the son, who's an American citizen. I just note that for the record. I want to ask you this.
Can I just say, we asked Mr. Khalil about that. We congratulated him on having his first child born to him on Monday, and we met with him on Tuesday. He had requested his ability to have a furlough to just go for a day, to be with his wife and new son on the day that he was arriving. And ICE just refused it, but they refused it because Marco Rubio's order with no documentation is the guiding legal overriding, governance of this prison. So it was just a further example of the inhumanity, the appalling lack of respect for the dignity of people like Mahmoud and Ramesa, that he was denied the ability to even be there with his wife and son on the day he was born.
Let me ask you this, Senator. You've been in public life for quite some time. You served in the House for many years. You served the U.S. Senate. You've seen the Reagan administration. You've seen George W. Bush after 9/11 and Guantanamo. Some of the awful cases there of cab drivers who, ended up getting turned in as terrorists when they were no such thing. Denied in the beginning habeas corpus. This specific thing of lawful residents, broken no laws, here legally, being taken off the street for political speech. Have you ever encountered that in your time in public life?
We're witnessing things that even Richard Nixon would never even dream of doing. We're in unprecedented historical times in the United States right now. It's all part, obviously, of the Roy Cohn mentorship of first Joe McCarthy, then Richard Nixon, and ultimately Donald Trump. He's the mentor for all of them. And he had 3 rules: attack, attack, attack. Number 1. Number 2, never admit that you made a mistake, ever. And number 3, always declare victory.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. We're in the pluperfect form of this lesson that Roy Cohn taught Trump. He believes he's not bound by any rules whatsoever. It's McCarthyism on steroids as he whisks people off of the streets with no charges, putting them behind barbed wire, which is where we had to meet Ramesa, which is where we had to meet Mahmoud yesterday. So this is all new territory, and it's imperative that America stand up. And so that's why we're so proud of Harvard University fighting against authoritarianism, why we're so proud up in Boston of Wilma Hale, the law firm, fighting. It's why we put 100,000 people on Boston Common just 3 weeks ago, up and fighting, and this just has to continue to build and build a momentum across this nation. We are seeing a fundamental authoritarian undermining of the constitutional privileges, rights that were fought for by generation after generation, which are being shown no respect by Donald Trump or, in this instance, Marco Rubio, who is the absolute handmaiden of Trump in his efforts to absolutely circumscribe the constitutional rights that everyone is entitled to.
Senator Ed Markey, Massachusetts, thank you for your time.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Still to come, there is a complete meltdown in the building. After another security failure, things continue to crumble for Trump's Secretary of Defense. Next.
If you're living with moderate to hold you back, but now there's Skyrizi, so you can be all in with clearer skin.
Things are getting clearer, I feel free to bear my skin, yeah, that's on me. Nothing is everything.
With Skyrizi, you...
The acute dysfunction at the top of the world's most powerful military doesn't seem to be going away because it's actually getting worse. Today, Politico is reporting that Pete Hegseth, quote, surrounded himself with advisors. Bitter brawl has now unraveled into revenge power plays, surprise firings, accusations of leaking, and embarrassing headlines that are blowing up the Pentagon, distracting from Trump's agenda, and possibly jeopardizing Hegseth's job. Now, the Defense Department is notoriously nonpartisan, avoids deviating from decorum, so an eruption of infighting is only making Hegseth's stain on the Pentagon worse. Quote, there is a complete meltdown in the building, and this is really reflecting on the Secretary's leadership, said a person familiar with the matter. Pete Hegseth has surrounded himself with some people who don't have his interests at heart. Joining me now is one of the reporters of that story, Paul McCleary, who covers the Pentagon for Politico. Paul, I got to say, this is a very illuminating piece. Thank you for your and your colleagues' reporting. Let me just start by one of the ways that you framed this that was useful for me was there was some notion when this person who didn't have a traditional resume for this job was confirmed, he would be surrounded by people with a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of experience at the top. And yet it seems he kind of brought in his people at the top, and that's been part of the problem.
Yeah, a few of the Dan Caldwell is one of his top advisors, and Darren Sullivan. Like I'd worked with Hegseth a little bit in the private sector when Hegseth was working with veterans organizations, right? So he knew them previous to this, and he brought him with him to the Pentagon. They both had some Pentagon experience, but not normally as much as people in those roles would have. They're both veterans, so they'd both been in the military. They both had served, and then a long time. He had, again, a little bit of Pentagon experience, but none of these guys were really in the building for years and years and years and built those relationships as these top advisors normally do, or else they're former senior officers many times and things like that. So it's a group that come in who are not, you know, newbies to Washington, but pretty new to the building and pretty new to this sort of organization. I mean, it's a massive global organization, right? Millions of people in uniform, about 800,000 civilian employees around the world, and it's a big job to manage all these fiefdoms, you know, as well as being a diplomat when you go overseas. So this is a brand new thing, and especially it makes it difficult when people who hadn't really been there before, and Hegseth, who had never, you know, he was in the Army, he retired as a major from the Guard years ago, but he had never done anything even close to this size or scale.
The other thing that was clarifying about your piece is that the rivalries here, I mean, clearly these people, 3 people have been marched out of the building. The chief of staff, Casper, has been relocated. There's tons of leaks that reflect incredibly poorly on Pete Hegseth. He had a makeup studio installed at the Pentagon. Today we just got reporting that he had Signal installed on his computer at DOD, which I guess would make it easier to copy and paste, but also seems like maybe not a great idea. Obviously, these guys all kind of hate each other now, but one of the things that came through in your piece was there's not some ideological stakes here. Like, this is purely personal pettiness at this point where they all kind of hate each other.
Yeah, I mean, it boils down to a personality clash. It's not like there's this kind of neocon versus MAGA feud or something like that. They're all pretty much on the same page. Dan Caldwell, he tweeted over the weekend with the other 2 advisors who were fired. They released a statement saying they fully support President Trump's agenda. They fully support what he wants to do internationally and with the military, but they just clashed with Casper. And, you know, the leak accusations are what really sunk the ship here, right? I mean, I think Hegseth thought was told that these guys were all leaking. And they leaked, you know, the story that came out of Elon Musk coming to the Pentagon to get Chinese war plans and other things like that. And they all claim it's not true, that they did not leak these stories. And there was an investigation launched, and they said that they were not given polygraphs, which some defense officials had claimed that they were, and that there's no evidence against them, and they were marched out of the building because of this personality clash.
One of the pieces of reporting is just that Joe Casper, who was the chief of staff, had a meeting where he started the meeting by telling people about his bowel movement, that there was another instance in which he recounted, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like a trip to a strip club. Is that what you've reported?
That is what we had been told by multiple sources, yes, and I think it's been corroborated by other news organizations as well, both of those stories. About
this is the chief of staff for the Secretary of Defense.
Yes. Yeah, he liked to shake things up, I guess is a polite way to put it, in meetings. He also had a habit of calling senior military officials officers in the military. Well, Pete Hegseth is Secretary of Defense, and I imagine he will be for quite some time. I mean, it took the Trump administration a lot of time and effort to get him through the Senate, right, the confirmation hearing. So they're not going to give up on him. And he's executing the president's agenda, right? DEI, you know, getting woke out of the military, transgender, things like that. He's doing everything that the president promised he would do. So he's fulfilling on his promises. He's bringing in new advisors now, right? His junior military assistant, a Marine Corps colonel, put in his papers to retire, and he's likely going to be one of his advisors. And I think there's some jockeying for position now with some other people who may have less experience than the previous three gentlemen did, but we're not really sure. We'll have to see who he brings in. But it'll have to be people who he trusts, because the circle of people he trusts, I think, is constricting at this point.
I don't think the trust is the key problem here. Paul McCleary, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. That is All In on this Wednesday night. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. Thank you, my friend. Much appreciated. And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Very happy to have you here. The capital of Vermont is the beautiful city of Montpelier. This was yesterday at the state capitol in Montpelier. Protesters outside, rallying on the steps of the state capitol. They also marched outside. They ended up protesting inside, including with some state legislators among them, all to show support for Mohsen Maddawi, a Vermonter and one of the international students, also a legal permanent resident, who Donald Trump has arrested, even though he's not accused of any crime. This was yesterday at the state capitol in Montpelier. This was early this morning in Burlington, Vermont. People turning out about an hour away from Montpelier in Burlington, because Burlington is where the federal courthouse is. And they turned out there early this morning. After rallying at the State House yesterday, they turned out there early this morning while a federal judge held a hearing on Mr. Maddawi's case. And at that hearing, the judge ruled that Mohsen Maddawi cannot be moved out of Vermont. The Trump administration cannot move him to some immigration prison in Louisiana or somewhere else all the way across the country. The judge says he needs to stay where he is. His lawyers say they are going to be back before this same judge next week, and they will be seeking Mr. Maddawi's immediate release. Today, two of the law firms that are fighting in court against Trump's efforts to target them had federal favor the arguments from the law firms against the Trump administration, as they have in every hearing thus far involving these cases. But I will tell you, there was a little bit of a logistical complication in trying to get that reporting from those two court hearings today, because in both of those court hearings today, the courtrooms were packed to the rafters, every seat full and then some, which made it hard for some reporters to get in. Stakes are very high. People want to be there to witness it. People are showing up. Last night, as the car company Tesla held its earnings call to discuss that company's catastrophic decline in fortune this year, folks in Seattle held a party at a local bar to listen to the sound of the call and to cheer their guts out when Elon Musk announced that he would be scaling back his time in Washington to instead try to salvage his flailing company. People all over the country, including in Seattle, have made this strategic decision to protest Tesla, to protest Elon Musk's role in the destruction of the federal government by focusing on that company, which of course is the source of his wealth and therefore his power. The company's nosedive, which was announced and conceded formally by the company in that call last night, the company nosediving has been the whole point of those protests, which have succeeded in their aim. And the damage to Tesla may very well be irrevocable, but so is much of the damage that Elon Musk and Donald Trump have done together in Washington. The only thing successful here is the focus on Tesla strategy, which has apparently succeeded in pushing Elon Musk out of the bizarre, unprecedented, unelected government role he took in Washington after paying for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. It worked. Pushback doesn't always work, but not pushing back never works. And sometimes when you do push back, you win. So this is my last week of doing this show 5 nights a week. I said around inauguration time that I would be here for the first 100 days of Trump's term in office. That 100 days is up a week from tonight, and so a week from tonight will be my last night of this 5-day-a-week thing. I will stop doing 5 nights a week. Next week, I will go back to just doing Mondays. I'm not going away. I'm going to be here every Monday. And the great Jen Psaki is going to be here at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Tuesday to Friday. You're going to love it. Don't worry. It's all going to be fine. But as we get to this benchmark, which is going to be a transition for me, I've been thinking about what we've been through this past 90-plus days as we're heading toward the 100-day benchmark. And I realize that at least the way that I have come to understand what we're going through, it's got kind of, I guess it's got like three sides to it. I mean, yes, this is a story of Trump's extremism, right? We really are, without a doubt, going through a kind of attempted, and that has included destroying as much of the government as possible and using the government in every way they can to try to hurt people in the country who the president wants targeted. They are having government attempted takeovers of huge swaths of civil society, including the legal profession and education and even like museums. They are banning books. They are policing what words people are allowed to use in bizarre and authoritarian ways. They are using terror tactics and secret police tactics against people they are targeting, including secret detention and sending people to foreign gulags. They are reversing our alliances with the countries of the free world and aligning us with the dictatorships instead. They have freaking redecorated the White House with cheesy-looking gold gewgaws, so it looks like a cheap budget hotel version of the Kremlin. I mean, like, we are there. The authoritarian project is definitely here. It is what we are up against. Everybody who warned against that before the election was correct, no question. That's part of it, right? The second part of what we're going through is the country loudly and roundly in every single state in the country, in blue states, in red states, in big cities, in small towns, in Washington, and everywhere else. I mean, every single freaking day. This was yesterday in Detroit, and yesterday in San Diego. People protesting, saying, hands off the EPA. This was Tyler, Texas yesterday. People absolutely reaming out their Republican Congressman Nathaniel Moran at a town hall in his district in Tyler, Texas. This was North Carolina earlier this week. People in Republican Congressman Ted Budd's district holding an empty chair town hall there for him, to which he refused to show up. They packed the House anyway without him. This is Pomona, California yesterday. People turned out to protest at a Home Depot parking lot after Trump's immigration agents came there earlier that day and arrested people from that parking lot. The community turned out in response. This was 40 minutes away in Anaheim, outside the offices of Republican Congressman Young Kim, people protesting against the Trumpcades to Medicaid, which will be absolutely devastating in Kim's district and in most places around the country. And everywhere. This just, you know, like snapshot. Turning out and saying no every way they can. That has been part of the story, too, and one that we've tried to keep in focus here on this show. But I said there's kind of, I think, three parts to this story. It's Trump's extremism, people saying no. But there then is this third thing, which has been the undercurrent to all of it. And to me, I think it is the real lesson of the first 100 days. I mean, I know the first 100 days is like an artificial benchmark, but it's a benchmark that we are using. And if there is something to learn about what Trump in power is going to be like, I think the first 100 days have given us one very clear lesson, right? We know he's trying for the whole dictator thing, you know, no elections, no courts, no resistance, rule by terror, right? We know that. We know the people of this country aren't having it. But I think what we should also know, what we have just lived through in this first 90-plus days thus far, is him screwing up. It's him absolutely blowing it. I mean, it is one thing to understand the gravity of his intentions, but I think it is equally important to recognize that he's really bad at everything he tries to do. I don't know if he's bad at good stuff he tries to do, because he's not trying to do much that seems good. But the bad stuff he's trying to do, he's been real bad at that. I mean, it hasn't been funny exactly. It's too disgusting for that, but it has been the proverbial. You remember the first big surprise destroy the government thing that he did right after the inauguration? He sent out a White House memo ordering the freezing of all federal funding, all federal grants. And then less than 48 hours across the country. The Monday evening memo from the White House Office of Management and Budget sparked uncertainty and left the White House scrambling to explain what would and wouldn't be subject to a pause in funding. So it was kind of the first big thing he did, and then they immediately had to take that back. We're just going to, that's rescinded. We'll try that again, right out of the gate. And then right on the heels of that, you remember this one? When they accidentally put somebody in charge of the officials goofed on the White House website. You don't see the word goofed in the Wall Street Journal all that often. White House officials goofed on the White House website and listed the wrong man in charge of the FBI, people familiar with the matter said. Instead of correcting the error, White House officials let it stand. And the two men traded temporary titles at the FBI. So they, accidentally put the wrong person as the acting head of the FBI. Mixed up the names. We didn't mean to put you in there. Oh well, who cares? We'll just let the other guy we didn't mean to put in charge of the FBI be in charge of the FBI. What could possibly go wrong? Immediately after that, turns out they accidentally put the names of hundreds of CIA officers in an unclassified email and sent it to the White House, where things like that just kind of happen now. That same day, we learned that Trump has accidentally made it impossible for the Postal Service to accept mail from China. Trump made an announcement about shipping things from China. He had no idea, apparently, what the implications of that announcement would be. But then the post office announced, based on what you said, sir, this means America can no longer receive mail from China. And, well, I'm not exactly sure what he did mean, but that wasn't what he meant. So, that had to be reversed, too. By then, the president's top campaign donor was working his bizarre magic in Washington, so we got the accidental firing of the National Nuclear Security Agency, which handles the safe transportation, storage, assembly, and dismantling of our nation's nuclear weapons. We didn't mean to do that. Trump administration fires and then tries to rehire nuclear weapons workers in DOGE reversal. Then this was the very next day. Headline, New York Times. DOGE claimed it saved $8 billion in one contract. It was actually $8 million. So that's cool. They were off by roughly 100,000%. But, don't forget, these are the smart guys, smart kids. Next day, headline, Agriculture Department tries to rehire fired workers tied to bird flu response. We accidentally fired all the bird flu people in the middle of the bird flu. Can we get them back? No, we can't. That same day, headline, Trump administration reverses plan to end free COVID test program. The taxpayers bought all these COVID tests, perfectly good COVID tests. They're still COVID. People are still testing for COVID to see if they have COVID. But because the Trump administration doesn't like COVID, they're going to what? Incinerate millions of tests, of perfectly good tests? So Americans instead have instead of getting the free ones the government already bought to hand out? Seriously? No, not seriously. Reverse that one, too. This was also that same day. This is a big day in Oopsville. Headline, Trump administration reverses its previous decision and reinstates legal aid for migrant children. Yeah, turns out babies don't make great lawyers. Doesn't work out great to have literally babies and toddlers appearing in court alone with a judge, asking them questions. I said, all rise, baby. Are you able to stand on your own? Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah, they reversed that, too. They have since tried again to take away the lawyers for babies and little kids in court after this initial reversal. So this one actually remains a live issue. I don't know if that's better. 2 days later, we accidentally cut the program that helps the 9/11 first responders. Did we mean to do that? I think we did mean to do that, but we certainly can't defend it now that people are asking us to defend it. So that one gets reversed, too. Then Trump's top campaign donor, Elon Musk, tries on the federal government the same thing he did to destroy the company Twitter. He sends out the "What did you do last week" email, insisting that anybody who doesn't immediately respond to that email will instantly be fired from the federal government, no exceptions. Really? Seriously? No, not really, and definitely not seriously. Headline, federal agencies can ignore "what did you do last week" email, Trump administration says. Then this is the following day. We get news from the VA, where Trump has cut things like, oh, I don't know, little liberal woke programs like cancer treatment and support for veterans with cancer and burial services for veterans. Trump cut burial services for veterans? Really? Yeah, for a hot minute until people freaked out, and so, yeah, he reversed that too. I mean, are you kidding me? He was not kidding. Next, headline, VA contract cancellations halted in major reversal. Maybe at this point, they're getting a little shy about screwing up so much, about having to take back. The very next day, after taking back the veterans' burials that Trump cut, we get this headline, Elon Musk admits DOGE accidentally eliminated prevention measures combating Ebola virus. Oops. The next day, headline, Trump administration reverses course after putting Veterans Crisis Line hires on hold. Quote, due to an administrative error, job offers for some Veterans Crisis Line positions that were scheduled to be filled later this month were mistakenly rescinded. This issue has been addressed, and VA due to an administrative error. What kind of administrative error has you accidentally cutting the suicide hotline? That same week, headline, struggling with errors, DOGE deletes billions more from list of savings. Quote, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has deleted hundreds more claims from its mistake-plagued wall of receipts. Late Sunday night, the group erased or altered more than 1,000 contracts it had claimed to cancel, representing more than 40% of all the contracts listed on its site last week. And this was the next day. Headline, Trump abruptly walks back his directive to fire thousands of federal employees. Quote, in revised guidance issued to the heads of federal agencies, the Office of Personnel Management tries to rewrite history by claiming it never actually ordered agencies to fire those employees. Let's pretend we didn't do that one. And then this was the next day. Oh, this was a great one. Quote, at 2 p.m. Tuesday, the Trump administration posted a list of 443 properties for sale, an inventory that ranged from an El Paso toll booth to the FDA's research campus in Silver Spring, Maryland. In the next 5 hours, more than 100 properties were removed from the catalog, including the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the headquarters of the Department of Health and Human Services, the headquarters of the Department of Justice, the headquarters of the Department of Labor, and the headquarters of Veterans Affairs. By Wednesday morning, the entire list had been removed. So yes, Trump did announce that he was selling hundreds of federal buildings, including, I don't know, the headquarters of the Justice Department. But did he mean that? We're not even sure if we know. Oops. They just put them all up for sale and then took them all down and didn't answer any questions about what had happened there. Pretend that didn't happen. Then this was the very next day. Headline, in dizzying reversal, Trump pauses tariffs on some Mexican and Canadian products. A few days later, headline, Trump administration scraps far-reaching cuts to Social Security phone services after Washington Post report. Oh, this was genius. Quote, the Social Security, this is amazing. The Social Security numbers and other private information of more than 400 former congressional staffers and others, including President Trump's own lawyer, were made public Tuesday in the unredacted files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy that President Trump ordered released. After the Post reported the disclosure on Wednesday, the White House rushed to mitigate the impact. The National Archives then started screening the documents for Social Security numbers after they had already been publicly released. National Archives started screening the documents for Social Security numbers after the fact so that the Social Security Administration could identify living individuals and issue them new Social Security numbers. Oops. Oops. We accidentally very thoroughly doxed hundreds of people, including the president's own lawyer, publishing like their names, their place of birth, their full birth dates, and their full unredacted Social Security numbers, hundreds of them. Oops. Then the following week, we get, oh, this is a real oops. Jeffrey Goldberg, editor of The Atlantic magazine, headline, "The Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans." Then this one, headline, "Trump administration admits Maryland man sent to El Salvador prison by mistake." 2 days later, headline, "Trump's tariffs hit remote islands. One is home to mainly penguins." The next day, headline, "Will make mistakes," says RFK Jr., as fired U.S. health staff asked to return. 3 days later, headline, "Economists reveal major math blunder in Donald Trump's tariff formula, which inflates the impact by 400% and could spark global trade chaos." The next day, headline, "National Park Service restores Underground Railroad webpage." Oops. Oops. Had we messed that up? Will you guys please pretend that that was a mistake and not something we totally did on purpose, but then we couldn't defend it once we did it, and so we just quietly undid it while hoping you wouldn't notice? Can we leave it like that? Same day, headline, "DOGE cuts at a Florida manatee refuge have been reversed." Same day, headline, "Trump administration says it cut funding to some life-saving UN food programs by mistake." Oops. The next day, headline, "Trump announces sudden reversal on tariffs." This past Friday night, New York Times headline, "Trump officials blame mistake for setting off confrontation with Harvard." Quote, "The April 11th letter from the White House to Harvard should not have been sent and was, quote, unauthorized." And it hasn't even slowed down. I mean, just this week, headline, "Trump administration reverses course, restores funding for critical weather data centers." Headline, "Elon Musk's hand-picked IRS chief lasts just 72 hours. The story of this first 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency is sometimes a very scary movie because of what he really does seem to be trying to do and what he has already done to some people and some parts of our government and some elements of our country. Sometimes it is a very scary movie. It is sometimes also an action movie with people all over the country springing into action and standing up to stop him from doing those things as best they can. But the one thing it has consistently also been from the moment he got back to Washington is an unfunny farce, a slapstick mess of reversals and mistakes and, oops, let's pretend we didn't do that and let's try to undo it and let's hope no one notices just how dumb it was when we really did do it and we can't even really defend it, so oops. I mean, the one word that most sums up Donald word that best sums it up is oops. Just because they're trying to do really, really bad things doesn't change the fact that they're also just really bad at everything they try to do. Which for this country is definitely a curse, but also in some ways a blessing. We're heading towards 100 days. There's going to be a lot of look backs at what Trump has done. Whatever you hear, what anybody says, don't let anybody tell you this time around that they are competent.
Dry eyes still feel gritty, rough, or tired? With MyBo, eyes can feel MyBo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause
for Russia's war in Ukraine today. Peace talks in London, but they were thrown into disarray by us, by our government, when the American Secretary of State pulled out of these talks at the last minute, just hours after Trump's State Department said that Marco Rubio would be there for the talks. Secretary Rubio canceled. Then Vice President J.D. Vance announced his own version of a supposed peace plan for Ukraine. The J.D. Vance peace plan for Ukraine appears to consist entirely of Russia getting everything it wants, including all the Ukrainian territory it has invaded and occupied by force in this war. When Ukraine's president said in response, that might not work for us, Donald Trump went on a rant against Ukraine's president online. Today's London talks were supposed to be attended not just by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but also by the other actor who plays the role of Secretary of State for some reason in this administration. That would, of course, be Trump's real estate friend, Steve Witkoff, seen here bumbling through a meeting in Paris last week, seriously, at this meeting, telling French officials how much their country's 18th century presidential palace looks just like Donald Trump's house in Florida. They table laughed in his face. Mr. Witkoff did not laugh. He did not appear to get the joke, nor did he appear to get the fact that he was it. But nevertheless, Mr. Witkoff was supposed to be there at those London talks today, along with Marco Rubio. When Marco Rubio pulled out, Steve Witkoff also pulled out. Where is Steve Witkoff today instead? He is getting ready. The U.S. president need to have 4 hours-long, lengthy, solo meetings in Russia with Vladimir Putin? That remains unexplained. President Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, in one of his first interviews since President Biden left office, says that from a national security perspective, in his estimation, Trump's first 100 days in office have been a, quote, unadulterated disaster. He says, quote, President Trump and his team have gone at the core American advantages in the world and systematically tried to dismantle them. Across all of the major dimensions of the things that have been America's major advantages, in less than 100 days, President Trump has put them all at risk. He says, quote, this is about the core foundations of American power and purpose in the world. And President Trump's effort, essentially, to knock them out. Joining us now is Jake Sullivan, former National Security Advisor to President Biden. Mr. Sullivan, I really appreciate you being here. I know you haven't done many interviews, and I really appreciate you being here tonight for this one.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Rachel.
I'm struck by the stark nature of what you said when you say that President Trump is dismantling America's core advantages in the world. The things that have been our major advantages, the things that make us the power that we are. You describe him as systematically dismantling those things. What are those advantages, and do you see his work against them as being irrevocable?
Well, Rachel, I wouldn't say this. I'm not a person who usually speaks in hyperbole. I say it because I genuinely believe it. You ask, what are those advantages? And there are a few. It begins with America's unique system of alliances. No other power in the world has the strong, capable allies the United States has enjoyed for decades, and Donald Trump is intent on busting up those alliances. It's our unique capacity to attract talent from around the world. We can count on the talent of 7 billion people. China can only count on the talent of 1 billion people. But Donald Trump is casting doubt on whether we will be a welcoming place for students and researchers and people who want to come here to start companies. It's about a unique system of scientific research and innovation where the government, the private sector, and yes, research universities all come together to invent some of the most groundbreaking things of the past century. And yet he's going after basic research funding at NIH, and he's going after major universities. And finally, it's about our unique capital markets and our currency. And you saw when he did his quote-unquote Liberation Day that the world started to question whether America could really be relied upon for its capital markets and for the dollar. And underpinning all of that, of course, is our unique constitutional system underpinned by the rule of law, which, as you have quite articulately said, he's put under threat in various ways. These are the things that are distinctively American. And in less than 100 days, President Trump has gone after all of them. I don't believe anything is ever irrevocable because I believe in the capacity of the American people to reinvent and regenerate. But the damage he has done so far is significant, and it appears that there's probably more to come.
If we lose those advantages, which you just, I think, very eloquently and succinctly described, if you take those things away from America, what kind of country are we? Is there another country in the world that has any of the other characteristics that we have as a country, but not those advantages. Is there a country in the world that you think Trump is modeling us on or trying to make us more like?
Well, I mean, it certainly is taking us in the direction of a more authoritarian, more normal, more brutal great power. And that starts to look more like a China or a Russia. I mean, if you're sitting in Beijing right now and you're looking at what's happening in the United States, you're saying, we've spent a long time worried about these areas where the United States had a distinct advantage over us. We don't have the allies the U.S. had. Now it appears the American president's handing them away. We can't attract talent the way the United States does. Now France is going out and saying, hey, come to France because you're scared to go to the United States. We don't have that uniquely American innovation ecosystem, and yet the president of the United States is going at the basic research foundations and the institutions of higher learning that have set America apart. Amazing. So there is a kind of remarkable way in which our competitors and adversaries have got to be looking at this and saying, what the heck is going on? And we can't believe our luck.
When it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, Marco Rubio pulling out of these London talks, President Trump once again attacking Ukraine's president, J.D. Vance essentially presenting the Kremlin's dream of what of how this war would resolve as America's idea, or at least his idea about what should happen here. I mean, part of what you described in terms of not just America's adversaries, but America's competitors stepping up and taking up some of the space that we used to take up. I wonder if you think that the Europeans and Ukraine's other allies essentially can band together in a strong enough way to supplant the role that we've had. If we're effectively siding with Russia, we're not just getting out of this. We appear to be very much siding with Putin's take in this war. Do you think that Ukraine and its allies will be strong enough to take up that space where we used to be?
It's a great question. Let me start by saying that it's really difficult to bring about a just and durable peace in Ukraine, and I will be the first to acknowledge that. But what is amazing to me, and you kind of pointed this out in your opening comments, is the way that the United States has approached this negotiation is to give Russia formal recognition of Crimea, which is sovereign Ukrainian territory, formal recognition of it as a Russian territory. Something, by the way, Rachel, China hasn't even done. China doesn't recognize Crimea as part of Russia, and now Donald Trump is saying he's prepared to do that. To give Russia all of the territory they've illegally invaded and conquered, and to give Russia a promise that Ukraine will never be a part of NATO, and to get what exactly in return? Apparently nothing. Nothing. I mean, that is not a credible way to go about a negotiation. This is effectively diplomacy by means of full pressure on Ukraine and a series of giveaways to Russia, and down that path does not lie a just and sustainable peace. I do believe the Europeans have had a rude wake-up call, and they are going to express themselves, and Ukraine, of course, will express itself too. But the United States of America has a unique role to play here, and I do hope that before it's too late, this administration changes course in the way that it's approaching these negotiations, but there's no evidence to suggest that they're going to do so.
Jake Sullivan, former National Security Advisor to President Biden. I mentioned at the top that you haven't done very many interviews. I know you spoke with the good folks at the Midas Touch, and you're here tonight. I would just suggest you've had such a long career in public service. Right now is a time that I think we need to hear more from you. I hope that you'll speak more with the media and do more interviews, make yourself publicly available. I think the country can really benefit from hearing more from you at this time, particularly when things are so chaotic in the international front. It's a real pleasure to have you here, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you do.
All right, thanks. Stay with us. A couple of weeks ago on this show. I have not forgot it since we showed it to you. It's just one of these things that really stuck with me. And actually, we've heard from a lot of you at home that you have not been able to forget it either. People reference this little local news clip that we played all the time when people get in touch with the show. I'll show it to you here again. It's a short piece of tape. This is local news coverage from Tennessee, from WSMV in Nashville.
In the back of the room, there was Lynn McFarland sitting and wouldn't budge. And standing a few feet away, I heard her say to troopers that she didn't mind being arrested. She said, I'm okay with that. I can't go. I fought for kids, and what they're doing here is wrong, so I'm at peace with it.
Tennessee state troopers hauling away 80-year-old Lynn McFarland, 80 years old and made of sheer determination, after she refused to leave a state Senate hearing room earlier this month. They picked her up, they carried her out, they arrested her. It's very hard to forget once you've seen it. We covered it on the show at the time. What Ms. McFarland was protesting was a Republican bill in Tennessee that would target immigrant kids in Tennessee elementary schools. Now, in Tennessee, Republicans have a trifecta. They've got a Republican governor, Republicans control the state Senate and the state House by big margins. Despite that, or maybe because of it, people who were opposed to Tennessee Republicans on this thing, the people who were opposed to Tennessee Republicans on this bill targeting little kids, they have shown up again and again and again and again, lots of them. People showing up over and over again to state House meetings and to state Senate meetings, and for every vote and for every hearing, every element of the legislative process related to this bill, to tell lawmakers no, to say that Tennessee should not do this. Kids themselves have shown up. Hundreds of students have shown up to look lawmakers in the eyes. They considered this bill.
Emmy Wilkins is a 10-year-old from Chattanooga. She was present for the committee hearing and knelt in front of Representative William Lamberth and other committee members in protest of the bill.
When I started shouting, I was just thinking about how many kids deserve to go to school during that time, and every kid deserves an education, no matter where they're from.
People young and old who oppose this bill have been making the trip to the Tennessee State House, making their voices heard week after week after week. We've covered tons of these protests. Yesterday afternoon, the Tennessee State Legislature adjourned for the year. And while the Tennessee State Senate had managed to pass its version of this bill targeting immigrant kids in elementary schools, it turns out the Tennessee House didn't get it done. They didn't do it. General Assembly ends without passing student immigration bill. Now, the whole thing could still get revived next year, but for now, it's gone. They stopped it. The Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition posting, quote, Tennessee protects education for all. HB 793 will not be voted on this legislative session. As Lynn McFarland herself put it on Facebook after hearing the news, she said she is breathing easier now. Delay is almost always the first step on the way to stopping something. If Tennessee Republicans want to try this again next year, they at least know what kind of pushback they're in for if they want to try for it. All across the country, we are witnessing a protest movement against Donald Trump and his Republican Party and what they're doing in Washington and increasingly what they're doing in the states. And it is a movement that is not just sustained, it is growing and spreading, including the protests that appear to be tanking the image and stock price and profitability of the Tesla car company, now ushering Trump's biggest donor, Elon Musk, out of Washington altogether. So what is the state of organizing against the Trump administration now? Because that also is coming up on 100 days. What should we expect next? I know just who to ask. We'll be right back. Sorry, start that over. Amid the wave of protests that we have seen all around the country this past 90-plus days, one of the things that has just paid off is the work of a remarkable coalition in Tennessee that has been protesting a Republican Tennessee-specific plan to target immigrant kids in elementary schools. We have seen seniors, people in their 80s. We have seen students, parents, teachers, a huge and very diverse group of people in Tennessee just relentlessly pushing back against this thing in Tennessee. They have turned up again and again and again and again and again at Tennessee's state capitol and at the state legislature as Republicans who overwhelmingly control state government in Tennessee have been debating this thing. We have showed it over and over again on this show in the past couple of weeks, in the past couple of months. But now after that sustained campaign, the payoff, Tennessee Republicans have just shelved that proposal for the year and gone home without doing it. When you go out to protest in Nashville or anywhere, you never know what exact effect you're going to have. But we do know that if you don't turn out, you won't win. And we do know that pressure sometimes does work in unexpected places and in unexpected ways. And we definitely know, as we approach 100 days of this Trump administration, that the protest movement sparked by Trump and the Republican Party in this era is not going anywhere. Joining us now is someone we like to check in with periodically about this momentum. Ezra Levin is co-founder of the grassroots group Indivisible. Ezra, thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's nice to have you back.
And great to be here, Rachel.
I wanted to check in with you again, as we have done sort of periodically, to get your sort of gut check, your sense about where the resistance to Trump is heading towards that 100-day benchmark. I feel like the protests are bigger, more widespread, more sustained, more diverse, getting more media attention, and starting to get more political effect visible in terms of the response to what's been happening. That's just my view from outside, though. How does it look to you from inside?
We got to organize. I've told you that we've been in a wave moment of organizing, that we've seen just an incredible number of new local volunteers starting indivisible groups every single month since the November election. We've broken each previous month's record in the number of new indivisible groups. And as you've been showing, this is having a direct impact, not just on the vibes out there, but on actual legislation, on actual people's lives. What we've seen from Trump and Musk and from the MAGA movement is they're using the authoritarian playbook. It is a shock and awe campaign. Go as fast as possible, do as much damage as possible. And look, some institutions, some elites were shocked, were awed. You look at some law firms, you look at Columbia University, you look at Washington Post, there are folks who were shocked and awed. But who wasn't shocked and awed? The 80-year-old in Tennessee or the 10-year-old in Tennessee who organized, who stood up, who said no. And that had a real impact on its own on that bill, but it has another really important impact. Cowardice is contagious. So is courage. When you see a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old stand up and say, no, I'm not going to go along with this, you know what happens? A lot of other folks see that and say, well, I guess I got to stand up too. That's what we've been seeing month after month after month, starting with some people demonstrating courage and then other people looking around and saying, wait, I can do that too. It's in my power. I'm not just a victim of world events. I can be a participant. That's what we're seeing right now.
Ezra Levin, the co-founder of Indivisible. We're heading into what's going to be a really intense period of reflection, people trying to sort of control the narrative about how the Trump administration is doing. What you and other folks at Indivisible have done is going to be a very, very big part of the story of this time in American history. Thanks for helping us understand it.
Oh, there's a lot more to come, Rachel.
I had a feeling you'd say that. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. I will see you again tomorrow. Now it's time for the last word with the great Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. We have Senator Chris Van Hollen joining us tonight. The earliest he can get to us, he says, is 10:40 p.m., so we're just saving the slot right there, eager for him to join us. That case is moving along. It'll be interesting to see what his reaction is to the judge in the case of Mr. Abrego Garcia accusing Donald Trump's Justice Department lawyers of bad faith. Those words, bad faith, in court filings. That's something judges don't usually do. But he apparently, the senator, experienced some of that bad faith when he went to El Salvador and came back, as he reported to you in his first interview about it in his meeting with Mr. Abrego Garcia. He experienced the bad faith of the Trump arrangement down there.
Yeah, well, it does feel like, I think in part because Senator Van Hollen has forced the issue. And I feel like that case is inevitably coming to a head, right? The Trump administration has decided to try to dance around this issue and to dance around the questions from the direct questions from this judge, and to try to, kick it upstairs, kick it to the Fourth Circuit, kick it to the Supreme Court, try to kick it back to the Supreme Court. They've tried to dance around this for so long. But Senator Van Hollen has called the question. Everybody knows that the questions must be answered. And we're coming to the end of the period around which the Trump administration can continue this strategy. And it's all been forced by Senator Van Hollen. I'll be really interested to hear what he says tonight, given how stark things are getting in that courtroom.
10:40 p.m. Is when we expect to get to him. So we're eager. Thank you, Rachel.
I'm ready. Thanks.
Thank you. Trump chickened out. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not the kind of language I use on this program. That's the kind of language that I and I hope you have come to regard as beneath the dignity of this hour of television, mostly because I studiously avoid cliche, and chickened out is like a wicked, lazy cliche, really cliche phrasing. It's the kind of thing you can expect from the low brows of social media world, where Elon Musk, who makes the mistake of thinking he's actually quite funny, often uses even uglier language. But Trump chickened out is actually big news today, big news in China, where the hashtag Trump chickened out was trending on Chinese social media. Chickened out is language beneath the dignity of the Wall Street Journal editorial board, of course. So tonight, instead of saying chickened out, they wrote this. Another harsh reality is that China called Mr. Trump's bluff and seems to have won this round. Beijing has also warned countries not to do trade deals with the United States that exclude China, or else. With even U.S. allies facing Mr. Trump's tariff assault, Beijing's threat has resonated in a way that it never previously did. U.S. diplomatic sway is ebbing. The question going forward is whether Mr. Trump is internalizing these economic and political lessons or merely pausing to fight his trade war another day. We doubt even Mr. Trump knows the answer, since so much of his decision-making is ad hoc. And so there's the Wall Street Journal saying, Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. And in Wall Street Journal speak, yeah, they said he chickened out. They did. And so, after trying to play the world's biggest tough guy by launching a trade war with China and the world, Donald Trump not only did not scare China a bit, but he is being humiliated in China as the world's biggest clown and the most economically incoherent American president China and the world have ever seen. Now, remember way, way back to last week when Donald Trump was promising that he would have a big, beautiful trade agreement with China very soon, like now or sooner. No one in China is calling the White House. No one. And so, with absolutely no proposal on the table from China, no concession from China, nothing but sharp, targeted, retaliatory action taken by China against the American economy, Donald Trump has decided to surrender to China without China giving Donald Trump anything in return. Absolutely nothing. Donald Trump said today that he was going to, at some time unknown, cut his absurdly high tariffs on Chinese goods, saying that the tariffs will, quote, come down substantially, but it won't be zero. Those were his words, won't be zero. So now, tariffs that were 145%, Donald Trump is saying, won't be zero. Okay. And because Donald Trump is publicly losing his trade war and publicly surrendering to China, the stock market gained back some of its massive Trump losses today. The stock market wants Donald Trump to lose. That's what they're saying. They want him to lose his trade war. The stock market wants Donald Trump to surrender in the craziest worldwide trade war ever initiated in the history of the world. And that's why the stock market went up today, because the Trump tariffs are terrible for the American economy, terrible for American consumers, terrible for American workers, and terrible for Wall Street. And Donald Trump said they're going to come down. That's all it took. That's all it took for the stock market to go up. Remember when Donald Trump was promising how quickly China would be calling him, the president of China would be desperately calling Donald Trump to make a deal? Here's what the Chinese government spokesperson said today, quote, "Claiming it wants to reach an agreement with China while constantly applying maximum pressure is not the right way to engage with China, and it simply won't work. China's position on the tariff war initiated by the United States is very clear. We do not want to fight, but we are not afraid to fight. If it's to fight, we'll fight till the end. If it's to talk, our door is wide open. We'll fight to the end." The rest of the countries of the world have absolutely no doubt which side of the Trump versus China trade war is willing to fight to the end and which side chickened out. Donald Trump, the man who never apologizes, the man who never backs down, but in fact frequently backs down, sounded like he was trying to apologize to China.
With China. Are you going to play hardball with them? Are you going to mention COVID?
Well, I'm not going to say, no, I'm not going to mention COVID. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice.
Oh, he's not going to blame them for COVID. Remember when he said he was going to blame them for COVID, like last week, make them pay for COVID in whatever his final trade deal with China would be in his trade war with China? That's what he said. He brought it up. That's why he was asked about it today. Are you going to blame them for COVID-19 when you're negotiating with them? And he said, oh, no. That was the cowardly lion roar you were hearing. That was the Trump nonsense. Now, Donald Trump is publicly begging President Xi to call him. And President Xi is not calling. The president of China is not picking up the phone. He's sending out a spokesperson to say, we'll fight to the end. No one in the Trump administration has said, we will fight to the end. Donald Trump wouldn't dare say today, we will fight to the end. His Treasury Secretary didn't dare say, we'll fight to the end. His usually clownish Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, wouldn't dare say, we'll fight to the end, because they won't, because they've already lost. Donald Trump's constant public flailing around ignorantly about tariffs in the White House these days has become a much more difficult rhetorical challenge for him than the way he idiotically talked about tariffs during the presidential campaign and lied to his voters every single time. He constantly told his campaign rallies that China would pay the Trump tariffs. He constantly told voters that not one of them would ever pay a Trump tariff, when in fact all of them and only them would pay the Trump tariffs, and China would never, and no foreign country would ever pay a tariff imposed by the United States. They never have, they never will, because that is not how tariffs work. Donald Trump never admitted that a Trump tariff, a tariff imposed by the United States, is simply an increase on the price of that product in the United States and only in the United States, and is only paid by buyers in the United States. But today, in his desperate tariff ramblings, Donald Trump finally admitted in one line, one little line, how tariffs actually work. Donald Trump said the words, and this was very little noticed today by the news media. He said the words, about tariffs. He said, you add that to the price of a product. Yeah, that's what I've been saying about Donald Trump's tariffs since the first time he ever used the word tariff years ago. And today, Donald Trump finally, after years of lying every single time he talked about who pays the tariff, after years of lying about that, he finally said in a little noticed comment, which those of you who've joined me in this multi-year crusade against Trump tariffs here in this program really deserve to hear.
So when you add that to the price of a product, you know, a lot of those products aren't going to sell.
That's right, Tariff Man. When you add the tariff to the price of the product, which is exactly how it works, a lot of those products aren't going to sell. And the more products that don't sell, including American products that don't sell because they have components in them that have been tariffed, that is exactly how you get a recession, a really, really big recession. On Monday, Donald Trump met with the CEOs of the big retail stores, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, who told him that they could be 2 weeks away from empty shelves. And everyone in America walking into a Home Depot or a Target or a Walmart and seeing empty shelves would know exactly who to blame.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, at least 10 Palestinians were killed, including a child, after an Israeli strike sparked a fire at a school sheltering displaced people in Gaza City. They're among 24 Palestinians killed by Israeli airstrikes on Gaza since dawn. Separately, civil defense workers in northern Gaza report Israeli warplanes have blown up 9 bulldozers being used in humanitarian operations.
These machines serve us, removing the rubble from the streets and retrieving the martyrs from under the rubble. At the very least, they provide us with a room or tent above our homes. The Israeli occupation came and destroyed them. The occupation is still causing us harm.
On Tuesday, Gaza's health ministry said Israel's total blockade of Gaza had cut off access to polio vaccines, putting the lives of over 600,000 Palestinian children at risk. In New Haven, Connecticut, protests have erupted on the campus of Yale University over the planned speech this evening by Itamar Ben-Gvir, the far-right Israeli security minister who openly supports the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. In 2007, Ben-Gvir was convicted by an Israeli court of incitement to racism and supporting a terrorist organization. Overnight, about 200 student protesters erected a tent encampment but canceled plans to occupy the space overnight, citing threats of retribution from administrators. Ahead of his visit to New Haven, Ben-Gvir attended a private dinner in his honor at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, alongside Republican lawmakers. Top diplomats from France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, as well as the United States, have postponed a high-level meeting with Ukrainian diplomats in London after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he would skip the talks. The diplomats were set to discuss the framework of a U.S. proposed ceasefire deal to end Russia's war on Ukraine. The meeting's abrupt cancellation came as a Russian drone struck a bus in the city of Mahanets, killing 9 people and injuring 42 others. On Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ruled out any ceasefire deal that recognizes Russia's annexation of Crimea, the Black Sea Peninsula Russia invaded in 2014.
Ukraine does not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about. This is beyond our constitution. It's our territory, the territory of the people of Ukraine. As soon as we start talking about Crimea, about our sovereign territories, we enter a format that Russia wants, which is to drag out the war.
Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports the Trump administration is working to eliminate programs aimed at holding Russia and its leaders and allies accountable for alleged war crimes, including intelligence gathering on Russian atrocities committed in Ukraine. India's military says it's searching for the gunmen who attacked tourists in the city of Pahalgam, Indian-administered Kashmir, on Tuesday, killing 26 people and injuring a dozen others. It's among the deadliest attacks in Kashmir in recent years as pro-independence rebels continue to fight against New Delhi's rule. Hunger and malnutrition are on the rise in Ethiopia due to conflict, severe drought, mass displacement, and regional economic and political turmoil that's left millions of people without access to food. That's according to the World Food Program, which estimates over 10 million people are facing hunger and malnutrition across Ethiopia, many of whom have been forced from their homes due to violence and the devastating impacts of the climate crisis. The agency warns conditions could likely worsen as its life-saving food assistance response in Ethiopia is at imminent risk due to critical funding shortages, including cuts in U.S. foreign assistance.
Now we are at the breaking point. We've been left no choice but suspend completely the treatment for 650,000 malnourished women and children simply because we've run out of commodities and funding. We are now operating with just about 50% of last year's funding. This means that 3.6 million vulnerable people could lose access to WFP assistance in the coming weeks unless funding arrives urgently.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced a sweeping reorganization of the State Department. The changes will include a rollback of programs focused on Africa, the climate crisis, refugees, and human rights, plus cuts to U.S. foreign assistance and the elimination of a body that seeks to investigate war crimes. At least 15% of the State Department's U.S.-based staff will be fired. This is State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce.
We must make the State Department great again. In its current form, the department is bloated, bureaucratic, and unable to perform its essential diplomatic mission in this new era of great power competition. The sprawling bureaucracy created a system more beholden to radical political ideology than advancing America's core national interests.
The families of several Venezuelan immigrants are demanding answers about their relatives' whereabouts after they were arrested and expelled from the United States to unknown locations. One of the immigrants has been identified as 32-year-old Ricardo Prada Vasquez, a delivery driver who was apprehended in late January in Michigan after making a wrong turn, then transferred to an ICE jail in Texas. Vasquez believed he'd be repatriated to Venezuela, but his family and friends have not seen or heard from him since mid-March, when the Trump administration flew 3 planes carrying over 200 Venezuelans from a Texas detention jail where Vasquez was being held to El Salvador. Vasquez is not on the list of the 238 people confirmed to have been sent there to the mega prison, and he does not appear in any images released by Salvadoran authorities. U.S. authorities confirmed he's been removed from the United States, but a friend told the New York Times, quote, "He has simply disappeared," unquote. Meanwhile, the family of 27-year-old Nayer Adrian Leon Rangel, who is also from Venezuela, says he was similarly disappeared into the U.S. immigration system. He was taken by ICE last month. His family says they haven't heard from him since. Here in New York, a judge has temporarily halted efforts by Mayor Eric Adams to reopen an ICE office inside the Rikers Island jail complex. Adams first signaled the move after he met with Trump's so-called border czar Tom Homan in February. 2 advocacy groups working along the U.S.-Mexico border are accusing Customs and Border Protection of human rights abuses and violating international law over the agency's practice of detaining immigrants and asylum seekers in open-air sites where they're exposed to extreme weather and other dangerous conditions. The Southern Border Communities Coalition and Center for Human Rights and Constitutional Law have warned the Trump administration may expand its use of open-air detention in New Mexico, Arizona, and California by having the U.S. military seize control of a buffer zone along a sprawling stretch of the southern border. The groups are urging the United Nations Human Rights Council to review the practice. A delegation of Democratic lawmakers traveled to Louisiana Tuesday, where they met with Tufts University PhD student Rumeysa Ozturk and Columbia University at the ICE detention centers where they've been jailed since March while they face deportation. Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey led the delegation, joined by Congress members Jim McGovern, Troy Carter, Benny Thompson, and Ayanna Pressley, who spoke to reporters after the meeting.
Well, just another day in Donald Trump's America. Donald Trump and his anti-freedom agenda that means to control our very bodies, that means to control the books we read, that means to control the free press, that means to control free speech.
I mean, did you not see what she had to say about the Pope?
No, how did I miss this? Oh, I missed this.
It's cringy.
It is.
It is. Basically, she was like, God is getting rid of the evil in the world.
And the Pope was part of the evil?
I guess so, because the Pope died. This was her response to him dying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's
wow.
dumb and a lowlife.
Wow, yes. I'd like to see St. Peter reading that. It's like, and it says here.
Secretary not going anywhere.
Secretary of Defense is doing a tremendous job, and he is bringing monumental change to the Pentagon. And there's a lot of people in this city who reject monumental change, and I think, frankly, that's why we've seen a smear campaign against the Secretary of Defense since the moment that President Trump announced his nomination before the United States Senate. Let me reiterate, the president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth in the change that he is bringing to the Pentagon, and the results that he's achieved thus far speak for themselves.
So, John, obviously he is
laughing this off and blaming it on someone else. For every service member, for every family member, this is an insult to see him behaving in such a reckless way and nothing happening. Add to that, absolutely no accountability, none. Not taking any, blaming it on other people when it's obviously him. And even worse, hypocrisy. Here's Pete Hegseth, I think back in 2016, talking about others. Take a look.
Apparently, the standard operating procedure inside the Clinton Secretary of State office was to send emails that couldn't otherwise be printed to the maid to print them out of a secure area or from a secure area and then hand them off. Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information. The fact that she wouldn't be held accountable for this, I think, blows the mind of anyone who's held our nation's secrets dear, who's had a top secret clearance like I have and others, who know that even one hiccup causes a problem, let alone a standard procedure like this. Standard operating procedure inside the Clinton Secretary of State office was to send emails that couldn't otherwise be printed to the maid to print them out of a secure area or from a secure area and then hand them off. Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information. The fact that she wouldn't be held accountable for this, I think, blows the mind of anyone who's held our nation's secrets dear, who's had a top secret clearance like I have and others, who know that even one hiccup causes a problem, let alone a standard procedure like this.
Really?
Wow.
Just one hiccup causes a problem. Just one little one causes a problem.
He holds the secrets dear.
He knows so much about how it's important to be careful with our nation's secrets, to not chat about with other people about them, except his wife, his attorney, his brother, and Jeffrey Goldberg, Caddy K.
Drinker and all-around loser, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is binge drinker and binge drinker and all-around loser. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is fighting back against facts that he started classified information on group text with his wife, a journalist, his brother-in-law, his dog catcher, etc. But he has some defenders, and we have a real dipshit senator from our state of Oklahoma. His name is Mark Wayne Mullins. Let me put up the tweet. He says, "I will lead the breach. I will lay down cover fire. I will take the high ground. I'll expose myself to the enemy fire to communicate. We must bring back integrity, focus, and put the warfighter first inside the DOD. I stand with @Secretary of Defense @Pete Hegseth." I just want to point out a couple of things. Number one, Senator Mullen has never served in the armed forces. Nope. Ever. And number two, I think that whole thing's kind of gay. And I'm a huge ally. Like, I'm a huge ally of the LGBTQ plus movement. But I thought that whole, like, I'll take a bullet for you and all of that nonsense. And remember, this is the guy during January 6th that hid and, like, shrunk down. But put up this. Here he is. Here he is with his little booster box. You see it circled there. And this is what we call him at IHIP News, is Senator Booster Box.
By trade, he's a plumber, which is an admirable job. But he was hiding, cowering in fear on January 6th, which I don't blame him. It was scary to be attacked by those people. But I also got a little bit of a love vibe on that. I mean, it was just way overly effusive for a man that has continuously displayed he is incompetent and not equal to the task of being defense secretary.
I mean, don't you think that that's what they have to do, though? It's like this just over the top jet stream of bullshit that, like, the people that call each other patriots online, they see that and they're like, oh, yeah. That's right, patriot. And I mean, and the situation is Mark Wayne Mullen has to stand on a booster box. He hides from the January 6 attackers, which obviously, as you mentioned, that's scary. All right, next up, wake up this morning. Here's the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Dow headed for worst April since Great Depression. And this is what happens when you elect a convicted felon to be president of the United States. And I can't say this enough. The best economies in the world have the best governments. An autocratic government is not going to be conducive to having a stabilizing economy. And beyond just the Dow, the structures and the formations and the foundations of the American economy are teetering because people are pulling their money out and the dollar is no longer a safe place to park your money. Or pulling their money out and the dollar is no longer a safe place to park your money.
One would almost think Trump was a failed businessman and bankrupted casinos at the rate he's destroying the economy. And he keeps going on about Jerome Powell, which impacts the stock market. This is a man that doesn't know what he's doing. This is an administration that doesn't value expertise, that the top economists in the world during the campaign were like, this is not good. This is a tax. People didn't want to believe it. And now here we are. China is getting ready to unite with Europe, leave us out in the cold. I mean, we are going, first of all, we're the biggest laughingstock, which, you know, Kamala Harris said it, and it's true.
Musk gave these back-to-back gestures that people are saying mimicked a Nazi salute. You see it there. Elon Musk has not directly addressed this, but he has appeared to edit out that gesture from the video that he posted on X, the platform he, of course, owns. Help us understand what transpired. Thank you.
Oh, careful with that salute. It wasn't even like a subtle, like a wave, like one of these, like a.
It's okay. It's good to be proud of German culture, German values, and not to lose that in some sort of multiculturalism that dilutes everything.
That's what a Nazi would say.
We don't want Italy as a culture to disappear. We don't want France as a culture to disappear. I think we have to have maintain the sort of reasonable cultural identity of the various countries. Or they simply will not be those countries.
Aber der ist wahrscheinlich für Sie auch ein Nazi. Hm? Nazis, 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 lauter Nazi.
USA, 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 USA. Ah! Yes.
No, dog. No, this is the Charlie Chaplin mustache.